Assalamualaikum and a very good day to my respected lecturer, Dr. Ani Munirah. I hope you are in good health in this pandemic of COVID-19. My name is Ahmad Syahmi bin Anwar Maidin, metric number 255692. Today, I will talk about the circumstantial evidence based on the case given. But before that, we need to know what the circumstantial evidence is all about. It can be defined as the existence of any fact from which the judge may deduce the existence of a fact in issue. In the case of PP against Shahrial, it defined that circumstantial evidence, if they are taken together, they will form a chain of circumstances leading to an inference of the principal fact. Actually, the essence of circumstantial evidence is weak because it is unable to stand alone if there is no support from the other circumstantial evidence. So, in this video, I would like to discover on this circumstantial evidence in the case of Juraimi bin Husin against public prosecutor. This case is actually a very famous case in Malaysia because it consists of the most tragic murder case. People will know about this case when we mention the name of Mona Fendi. So basically, this case is good because it depends substantially based on the circumstantial evidence. So now I will talk about the brief of facts. This is the accused involved, where these three accused were accused of brutally murdering Datuk Mazlan, who was the member of Legislative Assembly of the state of Pahang. It was first realized when Datuk Mazlan mysteriously disappeared and the police report was lodged. As a result of inquiries, a body of Datuk Mazlan was recovered. However, it was found in a tragic way because it had been decapitated and cut into 18 pieces, where it was found buried in the premise occupied by the three accused. This sketch can be referred as to illustrate on how the body of Datuk Mazlan was cut into 18 pieces. The complaint on circumstantial evidence consists of two limbs here, where both of these limbs, the court in this stage found that there is no merit to entertain it because the learned judge had took exceptional care to explain to the jury on the nature of the circumstantial evidence, and there was a sufficient admissible evidence which would establish offence that can charge the accused. There are a few lists of circumstantial evidence in this case, and I will mention a few of it from here. Where firstly, the decapitated body of Datuk Mazlan was recovered at the house occupied by the accused. It can render to an inference that the three accused were the murderer in this case. And the most reliable circumstantial evidence in this case were on 2nd July 1993, Datuk Mazlan withdrew about RM 300,000 ringgit Malaysia, and later on 3rd July 1993, the second and third accused embarked on a spending spree. They would spend about RM 200,000 ringgit of Malaysia. This is very weird because it leads to a question, does it coincident? Because prior to 3rd July 1993, the second and third accused were in financially strait. So next, there are a few items belongs to Datuk Mazlan was found in the possession of the three accused, such as Datuk Mazlan IC, watch, and shoes. And the body of Datuk Mazlan was buried in a hole in the ground soon after he was killed, it leading to an inference that this had been pre-arranged by the three accused. The court held that the examination showed that no defensive injury on Datuk Mazlan's body, which indicate that he had not put any struggle of any sort. And the court then agreed with the prosecution that any reasonable jury, when confronted with the circumstantial evidence that I had mentioned earlier, would have come to irresistible conclusion that the three accused committed the murder, and their failure to provide any credible information leave no room for any reasonable doubt as to their guilt, and thus the appeal was dismissed. The verdict of the jury was affirmed, and the sentence against the three accused to death was upheld. My feeling toward the decision given by the court is that I'm very impressed because the decision was made based on the argument and the circumstantial evidence tendered by the prosecution, which for me it can be reliable and reasonably believe the truth of it. Next, the decision also was good as it provides us the explanation of possibility that actually happened in this case based on the circumstantial evidence tendered. And the court also took a good step in going through each one of the circumstantial evidence, which for me is very good because it helps us to see the chronology happen in this case. And I like the way the decision were given by explaining from one issue to another issue on regard of the circumstantial evidence. Therefore, I agree with the decision in rejecting the argument from the accused counsel. For this part of evaluation, I'm referring to Section 5 of the Evidence Act 1950, where it is basically stated that if the evidence is relevant, then it is admissible. Thus, circumstantial evidence is admissible but with a lesser degree of probative value. We also can refer to Section 114 of the same Act, where the court may presume the existence of any fact which it thinks fits. So, this section basically requires the accused to speak out on his innocence. Same goes to the accused in Juraimi's case when the court seems to presume based on the circumstantial evidence and the accused insists that this circumstantial evidence lead to their innocence. In the case of Lim Heng Chong, it laid down 3 tests to convict based on circumstantial evidence, where firstly the circumstances must be cogently and firmly established, and it must pointing toward the guilt of the accused, and it should form a chain so complete. And in the Juraimi case, these 3 tests had been established where there were chains which, when it combined, it led to pointing the accused to be guilty of murder of Datuk Mazlan. These 3 tests also known as the irresistible conclusion, where in Jayaraman, it defined irresistible conclusion as another way of duty of prosecution to prove the guilt of the accused beyond a reasonable doubt. And in this Juraimi case, irresistible conclusion also exists. So there is a case named Sunny Ang against PP where the appellant was charged and convicted with murder of his girlfriend, and this is among the circumstantial evidence laid down in this case, where the relevant is that the appellant's mother was named as a beneficiary in some of the insurance policy bought by the deceased, and the deceased was a novice diver, and yet the appellant had allowed her to dive in dangerous water. Shockingly, less than 24 hours after the disease disappearance, the appellant made a formal claim to the insurance. So, based on the facts of circumstantial evidence here, the court reached the irresistible conclusion that the appellant had murdered the deceased. Next, in the case of Yet Boon Hai, it involved the murder case by way of setting fire to home. Among the relevant circumstantial evidence is that the petrol station attendant said that the accused had earlier bought petrol with 4 empty plastic containers, and then the officer of the fire department testified that fire was started with inflammable liquid such as petrol, which is linked to the previous circumstantial evidence. And the pathologist testified that the cause of death was from the smoke of inhalation. So the court, when rely on this circumstantial evidence, had convicted the accused. How to relate with Juraimi case? These 2 cases can be referred as a shared similarity with Juraimi case because it deals substantially with circumstantial evidence in convicting the accused. When there is a clearly shown a chain of one circumstantial evidence with another, circumstantial evidence would become strong and it allow the court to decide based on that. The chronology of Juraimi case shares the same nature with these 2 cases that I had mentioned earlier, where the prosecution relied on this evidence as it is relevant based on Section 5 that I had mentioned earlier. So, it indicates that the accused have their own motive, and from that they did prepare to commit, and finally they took an action of murder. Thus, not only in Juraimi case that the court depend on the substantially on the circumstantial evidence, but also in other cases like I had been mentioned earlier. So, in conclusion, this case is a very good case in exploring on how the circumstantial evidence works because it depends substantially on circumstantial evidence, and with that, the accused were convicted. And what should improve in the evidentiary aspect? I would like to propose that circumstantial evidence to have its own specific provision in the Evidence Acts, where it should be confined the explanation on how it is applied, and from that it could also secure the accused from any injustice and impose some standard to apply the circumstantial evidence. Next, the court also would need to be very careful in analyzing the circumstantial evidence tendered. So, the prosecution in relying in the circumstantial evidence has a heavy duty to ensure the evidence is strong enough. The case of Juraimi strongly showed to us that the prosecution successfully brought a chain of the murder to the court. Thank you.